To this first Labour Left Alliance Zoom webinar. My name is Phil Pope, I'm the chair of the LLA. We're expecting about 300 people today. Thank you very much for coming. If you haven't used Zoom before, I'll briefly explain a few technical things. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen that you can use to ask the speakers questions. We've turned the general chat function off, but you can talk to the co-hosts through the chat thing if you want to ask the chair's questions. If you want to ask a longer question, please say so in your message and we'll turn your microphone on and let you speak. Everyone's muted at the moment. If you want to speak, the co-hosts will put you onto the panel and turn your mic on for you. This is being recorded, so if you're worried about your privacy and don't want your name recorded, please change your name in your Zoom settings, and you can leave your video turned off and just speak through the mic if you want. Okay, so obviously the leadership election result wasn't the one we wanted, but I don't think people should be downhearted. There have been problems with the organisation and strategy of the left in the party, and that's why we're meeting today. We're not here to wring our hands, but to address those problems and prepare ourselves for the new situation facing us. I don't want to preempt what our speakers will be saying too much, but I will begin with a few facts and positive points just to set the scene. 250,000 people voted for Corbyn in 2015 to win the leadership election. This rose to 300,000 in 2017. Yesterday, Starmer was elected by 275,000 votes. So although this was a reversal for the left, it was not a disastrous one. We should remember that the most right-wing leadership contender, Jess Phillips, could not get enough nominations to even get on the ballot paper. Richard Bergen got a respectable 80,000 votes to come third in the deputy contest, and he stood on a very left-wing and democratic platform. The policy agenda of the party has been pushed to the left. We might not believe them when they say it, but the leadership contenders did mostly say that they would support a lot of Corbyn's policies. 5 years ago, we wouldn't have imagined that Corbyn would be elected or that Labour would have increased its membership so significantly, and a lot of us weren't in the party. CLPs are now functioning that didn't meet before. Branches are meeting where none existed. There's a lot more to do, but this is real progress. So over the last year, the Labour Left Alliance has been formed. We signed up our 2,000th supporter yesterday. We're trying to encourage people to stay in the Labour Party and build on what has been done in the last 5 years. So I'll say no more now. I will introduce our first speaker, Moshe Machover. He's an Israeli socialist and retired academic, founder of the Matzbin organization in Israel. He's a Labour Party member and was briefly expelled in 2017, supposedly for support of another political party, but there was a nasty insinuation that he was guilty of anti-Semitism. So we'll now bring Moshe in. Can my co-host spotlight him in?
Hello, if I speak, you will see me. Is that okay? Can you see me now? All right. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you, although this is not a very happy occasion and not very happy times. Yes, as the chair mentioned, I was expelled in October 1917, allegedly for, it was connected with an article that Labour Party Marxists republished on 21st of September 2017. That was during the Labour Party conference of that time. The title that they gave this article was anti-Zionism does not equal anti-Semitism. Believe it or not, this was an occasion or produced as a sort of purported evidence of anti-Semitism. The fact that an article by me, which they entitled as anti-Semitism does not equal, or the anti-Zionism does not equal anti-Semitism. But actually this was a reprint of an article that I wrote and was published in the Weekly Worker on 19th May 2016. That was before I rejoined the Labour Party. And the original title was, "Don't Apologize, Attack." I wish they did what I suggested in that article. I think the leadership, Jeremy Corbyn and so on, apologized and apologized, and apologized, was trying to conciliate, and of course it didn't work. This does not only refer to the allegations of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, but on other things he was too conciliatory. In the case of anti-Semitism, I think it was partly that he was badly advised, possibly by John Lanzmann, who suggested at the time that Israel should be discussed without mentioning Zionism. That's like suggesting to discuss the Soviet Union without mentioning communism. Zionism being the official ideology of the State of Israel. But I mean, what should have been said was F off. I mean, these attacks against the Labour Party for anti-Semitism are obviously done in bad faith. I've given this example or this metaphor several times, but I think it bears repeating. I mean, it's like spotted hyena spotters saying, you know, we're going to Norway to spot spotted hyenas. It's not that spotted hyenas don't exist in Norway. They do, actually. I think in the Oslo Zoo, there are a couple of spotted hyenas. But if you are a spotted hyena spotter, you wouldn't go to Norway to spot spotted hyenas, because this is not the natural habitat of spotted hyenas. So if somebody says they are going to Norway to spot spotted hyenas, obviously they are acting in bad faith. It is obvious, and it was obvious that these attacks were done in bad faith. The thing is that these attacks, on which I'm going to concentrate mainly, because as an Israeli, I think this is what I am concerned with most. They are motivated by various things as far as various attackers are concerned. They have different aims, and they all converge using this attack of anti-Semitism as a tool for their purposes. First of all, there are the Israel worshippers, the people, Jewish and non-Jewish, who for one reason or another admire the Israeli settler state and the Zionist project of colonization, which is the project that founded the State of Israel, of which Israel is also not only a result, but also a tool for its further continuation. I mean, the further continuation of the Zionist project of colonization. This is what Zionism is all about. And obviously, they find it more convenient to substitute an open defense of the State of Israel and of the Zionist project of colonization by defining any attack on it, any disavowal of Zionism, any condemnation of Zionism and of Israeli policies as anti-Semitic. So this is one lot. But for others in the Labour Party and outside it, it is a convenient, the label of anti-Semitism attached to people who are critical of Israel and of Zionism is a convenient label of labeling left-wingers. It is a known fact and very easy to understand that most of the leftists within the Labour Party are defenders and supporters of the rights of the Palestinian people who are the victims of Zionist colonization. And therefore, it is a convenient label to, if you want to attack the leftists within the Labour Party, you use this label of anti-Semitism, which in effect means anti-Zionism or criticism of Israel, as a marker to target you and to try to penalize you. Some of us have been the targets of this attack, motivated by simply opposition to the left within the Labour Party. And I think this is going to grow and grow under the new leadership. There is also another motivation, which is seated deep in the British establishment. I want to read to you an excerpt from an article that appeared in The Guardian on the, when was it? Yes, the 8th of November, 2017. The article is about a person who is now at the very heart of the British cabinet, a person by the name of Priti Patel. And as some of you may remember, I remember it very clearly that in the summer of 2017, she spent a sort of holiday, quote unquote, in Israel. She was then a minister for, what was it? Foreign aid, right? And she, part of what she did was to suggest that British foreign aid, instead of being given to the Palestinians, should be given to, guess what, the Israeli army. As a minister in the Department of International Development. But that was just a part of it. The most curious thing is she had various meetings with Israeli officials. And one of the strangest of the meeting was highlighted by The Guardian. Let me read you the relevant excerpt from this article. It is Gilad Erdan's presence. Gilad Erdan is an Israeli minister, was and is an Israeli minister. It is Gilad Erdan's presence in meetings with Patel that is most telling, because his role is largely unconnected with the work of the Department of International Development. As public security minister, he has oversight of Israel's police. As information minister, he has a propaganda role, but of most interest is his position as strategic affairs minister. So he has, as it were, a triple crown. But the relevant thing is his role as strategic affairs minister. The article continues. Erdogan has emerged as the key figure in Israel's international effort against the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, BDS, and against other groups and movements that Israel accuses of seeking to delegitimize it through criticism of its human rights record. In that context, Erdogan's ministry was asked in 2015 to, quote, guide, coordinate, and integrate the activities of all the ministries and the government and the civil entities in Israel and abroad on the subject of struggle against attempts to delegitimize Israel and the boycott movement. Most controversially, Erdogan has been put in charge of large-scale efforts to target foreign individuals and organizations, reportedly including staff recruited from the Mossad Foreign Intelligence Agency, the Shin Bet Domestic Intelligence Agency, and the Military Intelligence Directorate. This is the end of my quotation from The Guardian. Now, what is the concern of the people like Priti Patel in making contacts with this minister who is, as The Guardian suggested, in charge of dirty operations abroad against critics of Israel? This is what, The Guardian is trying to imply. That was when The Guardian still published interesting articles on the subject. What is the connection? Why should the minister, does she care about anti-Semitism? Certainly not. Does she care really about Israel or Zionism? I doubt it. But for the British establishment, support for Israel is emblematic of being on the right track as far as foreign policy is concerned. Israel is the main, the favorite junior partner of American imperialism in the Middle East and beyond. Israel fulfills a certain role, a certain functional and emblematic role in the foreign policy of what is nowadays called the international community and used to be called the free world in former times. In other words, the United States and its camp followers. And it is this which concerns the British establishment, including parts of the British establishment which are within the Labour Party. We should be aware of this because what we are confronted with is not just something, a tiff or a conflict within the Labour Party. Behind the backs of in alignment with the forces within the Labour Party, which are aligned, which are now set to move against the left, is the whole of the British establishment, which would like to redirect the Labour Party as far as foreign policy is concerned. So this is a very formidable force. I will not go on about this, but just make a few further remarks. By judging by all that we know and all that Starmer has been saying during his campaign, he is sure to guarantee to collaborate and facilitate the witch hunt against so-called anti-Semites, which in effect means left-wingers, critics of Zionism, critics of the Israeli settler state, and critics of pro-imperialist foreign policy. That will continue and will be exacerbated. The fight will be bitter because the majority of Labour Party members are still supporters of Palestinian rights. This is evident. It was evident through all the recent conferences of the Labour Party, and if you are a member of the Labour Party and participate in meetings, that is very clear that the majority of members are supporters of Palestinians. That includes a huge number of Jewish members. At the same time, defending Israel is becoming more and more difficult because of maybe due to the virus crisis that we are undergoing now. People have not noticed what is happening in Israel, but the stench arising from corruption and putrefaction of Israeli politics is just amazing. I mean, what we are facing now is a government that is going to be headed by a person indicted for multiple crimes of corruption, bribery, and undue influence. I mean, he's indicted for serious criminal offenses. Funnily enough, you see, in Israel, there is a judgment by the High Court that a minister cannot continue to serve if indicted with criminal offenses. A minister has to resign. But Netanyahu says that this doesn't apply to a prime minister. Ordinary ministers have to resign if they are indicted with criminal offenses. But the prime minister can still serve, and he's going to serve. And this cabinet, headed by an indicted criminal, is now joined by the Israeli Labour Party, which from the huge party that founded the State of Israel has now dwindled into close to vanishing altogether. But the sad remainders of the Israeli Labour Party, with which the Jewish labor movement is associated and affiliated, is now joining the corrupt Israeli government, which is due to be formed now. The fact that it is more difficult to defend Israel and the Zionist project doesn't mean that the attacks against people who criticize Israel is going to diminish. On the contrary, the motivation for these false accusations of anti-Semitism and the witch hunt is directly proportional to the difficulty of defending Israel. The more difficult it is, the more desperate will be the people who attack people like us to continue with the witch hunt. So what I say, what should be our reaction? I say, don't give up, fight, fight and fight, and make it difficult for those who besmirch us, those who vilify us, to get away with it. The majority of Labour Party members is still behind us, is still with us, and don't give up without a fight. That's all.
That's great, Moshe. Thanks for those remarks. I can see there's quite a few questions for you, but I think we'll have the other speakers and then pick some of those questions out. So I'm now going to introduce Ian Hodson. Ian could unmute his mic. Ian's a LLA supporter and an activist in the Bakers Union. There you go, Ian. It's over to you.
Good afternoon. Obviously, thank you very much for the invitation. First thing I'd like to say, though, is just in case there's any of our members watching or any food workers out there, I want to send out my thanks to all of our members who's been continuously going to work in this crisis time, in pandemic, and obviously making sure that the food supply and the food chain is kept plentiful, despite what some people think when they're rushing out to the shops to empty the shelves. The supermarkets run a just-in-time system. That just-in-time system, unfortunately, wasn't built to enable people to panic buy as they have done in the last few weeks, I believe today they're suggesting there's been over £2 billion spent in the past 4 to 5 weeks, which is an incredible amount of money that's been pumped into the economy. But also what that's meant is that unfortunately we've seen some scarcities on the shelves, but there is no need to panic. There is plenty of food available, and people just need to act, as if they would do if we were in a crisis, because the food is not going to run out. One of the positives, though, has been the amount of people that we're seeing in our sector having to be recruited to replenish those shelves as well. So we have seen an uptake in job opportunities in some of the factories and some of the places we organise. But unfortunately, we've also seen some of the bad employers, which I'll come on to, I'm sure, shortly. Obviously, today, following on, I think I've frozen. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yes, Ian, you're fine. Carry on.
All right, okay. Obviously, yesterday we were all probably looking at those results and thinking, this is absolutely devastating, and what do we do next? And do we leave the Labour Party? And what does politics mean for me anymore? I mean, for me, I think what yesterday showed is a divided left leads to defeat. I think what we saw yesterday was a result of some organisations believing that they are too big to be ignored, and other organisations that are not quite as big not being able to influence the organisation that thought it was too big and should make all the decisions. I think what we saw in the election of the executive, the NEC, was a result of a failure of the left to galvanise around a single slate and move away as well from getting a consensus on the slate that how it was done previously, which is disappointing. But it's always been the problem, I think, of the left, that we get to a point where we start to see successes, and then unfortunately we have a tendency to split on the basis that we think we've reached that place now when we can go off and forget about the key elements, which are organising. And I think that's what we're seeing at this moment in time. I think Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell used to speak quite regular in recent months. I mean, I remember John coming to our conference, when Jeremy coming to our conference and saying, look, don't wait for the election of a Labour government to make these changes that we all need. Get out there, organise and campaign for it now. And I think what we saw in those results yesterday saw that through, because I mean, one of the worst parts, I think, of that result yesterday was when you actually look at the uptake from trade unions in taking part in those elections. The turnout was dreadful, in my opinion, just as it was in the general election. I think most trade unions would have to be honest and say that, unfortunately, the position that they took in relation to the European Union and the second European vote meant that they were probably unable to get a strong message out about why people should vote Labour. And I think that was reflected in why Boris Johnson got an 80-seat majority, and why many constituencies that have been traditionally Labour, unfortunately, turned into Tory seats. And I think it demonstrates as well that the capacity to improve, if we get a narrative and a message, and then we recognise that our strength should always be in workplaces and building from workplaces out into the community, would probably enable us to actually build around the socialist beliefs and socialist values that we all want to see in political life, which is obviously why, as a trade unionist, as someone who's works for the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union, we've always wanted to make sure that we were firmly cemented in our workplaces, but also into the community, and organised around areas which we thought would most engage people. So we'll talk about, you know, the campaign around 0 hours, which obviously was ignited when our members went on strike at Hovis in Wigan. And then we built on that into the campaign for decent pay, which led to the £10 an hour campaign, and how we was able to engage across political organisations and obviously, you know, through debate and through discussion, able to make sure that organisations saw the, you know, the reality of how we can come together around specific issues that actually unite us and campaign around those issues. In 2014, you know, I was classed as a militant, as an extremist, and that was just by the trade union movement. I mean, obviously it was seen as a ridiculous stance for a trade union to take. I mean, obviously, you know, just a few years later, we had it as, you know, the main plank, and probably one of the key reasons why in 2017 so many people were supporting the Labour Party in that general election, because it was campaigning about those issues that would impact on people's lives. It was about how society would be different and what those values and what that would mean to them. And I think, you know, what we need to do now is recognize, you know, that our key aims now is to understand that, you know, the Labour movement is bigger than just the Labour Party. Although I would encourage people to stay in the Labour Party, because obviously, you know, yesterday's vote also demonstrated that, you know, Lisa Nandy and Keir Starmer were unable to actually admit to probably being more liberal than socialist, because they had to campaign around those issues, which was actually going to attract the most support for their campaign. So it makes it difficult for them to move away initially. But if people leave the Labour Party, then it will become a lot easier for those changes to happen, and for those issues that we fought for, you know, and we think are very important to elect a Labour government, will end. You know, I mean, and it will also end our chances, I think, of winning a Labour government if we do leave the Labour Party. You know, I think it's very important now that people recognise that. It's good to see you back again now. You've unfrozen. It was a bit weird that, but I think it's important now that we see that people galvanise around the key concerns that we have as a people, and those key concerns that we have about you know, is also becoming, you know, prevalent in relation to, you know, how is it that we've suddenly found the money to fund the NHS? You know, we live in an economy that's always been regarded as one of the fifth or sixth richest in the world, but we've been told for years that austerity was a necessity. Yes, John McDonnell won that argument, but now more people are seeing that we are a very rich country. And when we've hit a crisis, we have the ability to fund our NHS. We have the ability to suddenly find homes for the homeless. You know, why is it that, you know, we've suddenly been able to find the ability to pay business, you know, 80%, so they don't have to make their workers redundant, but we couldn't find the money to keep British Steel open? Why is it these questions, you know, are going to become, you know, quite commonplace, I think, when people actually look after this crisis and see, you know, the society that they were living in before the coronavirus hit and the society that we have after. And I think important questions will be asked. And I think this is a time for us to understand that it's important for us as a group of people, as socialists, actually start to create the narrative about the future of what a country could look like, which is based around socialism. Like Attlee did at the end of the Second World War, we could actually, you know, show now what a society could be if we was to actually organise around the key issues about building homes, about making sure we invest in the National Health Service, about making sure that British Steel is invested in and renationalised, about the key issues around the renational. Why should we give £116 million, for example, to a bus company. Surely we should be renationalising those assets. But it's a debate that we can actually really have. Should we be giving billions of pounds to Virgin Airways? Should we be renationalising our airways instead of giving that money to a private individual who lives on an island and doesn't pay his taxes? Those debates now become quite open and able for us to engage in workplaces, in my opinion. You know, we need to start pushing those debates and discussions into workplaces, because I think that is the area where the left should always find its base, you know, and always find its home. And if you find your base and your home in those workplaces, then that then spreads into the community, which then leads into the ability to actually progress the arguments about the lives that would, you know, and how those lives would be if we organised around the issues of socialism and what socialism actually means to people. And I think this is not the time to go on the defensive. I don't think this is now the time to go backwards. I think this is now the time to understand that if we unite and we stand together, we'll always win together. You know, I mean, the campaigns that we've been launching around, first off, getting Witherspoon's to change its position on not paying its workforce demonstrates, because the amount of support that those people received from the general public was incredible and forced, you know, Tim Martin to change his approach. The amount of support, you know, we've seen, because we're now asking for 100% for their wages and explaining to people, actually, all that's happening here is Tim Martin is taking taxpayers' cash, but not using any of his own money to subsidise his own workers. Is that right? Especially when you consider he was committing himself, you know, to paying his senior management team and making sure himself didn't, you know, suffer any consequences because of the fact that his pubs were being shut. And, you know, and having those debates and those discussions and explaining to people now about why we need to organise has become a lot easier, because a lot of workers have been abandoned by their employer. They found out that all of those, you know, times when we've stood outside their factories and said to them, look, you know, we will always be here for you. Your employer won't always stand by you. And then the employers countered that with saying, no, we always make sure we look after your interests. They've now found out that isn't the case, because when they've looked for the support in this crisis, those employers have been found not wanting to put their hands in their pockets and use the profits that our members have created for those businesses, as they are doing at Green Corps. But again, you know, I think it makes our case stronger, and I think it gives our arguments more impetus. And I think what that also does is, you know, when we started the fast food campaign, part of that was to create a new civil rights movement in the UK. Well, it would have been the first ever civil rights movement in the UK. It was based around the issues of justice. You know, that's why the strapline was Hunger for Justice. And the idea was to galvanise people around, you know, the fact that if you can't afford to feed your family, that's an injustice that you're suffering. If you can't afford, you know, a decent place to live, that's an injustice you're suffering. If you can't get justice because you've been priced out of it, if you're getting sacked and you have to pay and you can't get the legal support or the legal advice you need, that's an injustice that we could galvanise people around. You know, but as it was at that particular time when we was about to launch that, Jeremy Corbyn went and got elected and it changed all that. But I think now we're back in that situation where, you know, we have to make politics work for us. For far too long, we've relied on politicians. I mean, unfortunately, we put a lot of pressure and stress on Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell to deliver, when really we should have been out there making sure that the ground was fertile enough for that message to break through. And I think our job now, I think, is a realisation of the place that we find ourselves. And I think it's our job to go into our communities, to go into our workplaces and start to organise. And to me, that is the key. You know, forget about, you know, what's happening inside the Labour Party. If we want to change society, then we need to organise. We need to build a movement that's unstoppable and that will create change, that campaigns around key issues that will bring people to us and enable us to put our message into every workplace, every community and every home, because this is the society we want them to live in. And this is the society where all of us can aspire and be inspired to make sure that our next generations, which is what we all want, isn't it? That's what we've all been looking to achieve. And I think what's important to me, and I think what's important to people who are contemplating whether we stay or leave the Labour Party, is the society and the reasons that brought us together in the first place. And I think what brought us together was the hope that we could build better than what we've got, and that our children and our families will do better than what we have. And we still have that dream, you know, and we can build it if we galvanise together and recognise there's always been people inside the Labour Party and outside, and now's the time to unite and go the right way in the right direction all together.
Thank you, Ian. Great points there, and it's really good to hear there's been some fight back and victories at this really difficult time. Now I'm going to hand over to Jo Bird. Jo's the Labour Party councillor in the Wirral. She just stood in the NEC elections and did very well and got 46,000 votes. Can you unmute your mic, Jo, and we'll swap over to you. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. It's brilliant to be here. I see we're talking with at least 346 people. It's a big meeting that we'd have if it was face to face. And thank you very much for Labour Left Alliance for organising this meeting. Most of all, thank you to all 46,150 members of the Labour Party who voted for me to be on the National Executive Committee. I really appreciate your votes. It's made a massive difference. I came fourth after the 2 Progress-backed candidates and 1 backed by Momentum. I beat the other one backed by Momentum, which is very interesting and sets a good tone for future left slates. Obviously, we really need a united left slate going forwards for the next elections for the NEC and so on. In my opinion, that slate should be strong, credible, democratically selected. We should not have anybody on it who's been after other members. It should have people on it who've spoken up for members who've been unfairly suspended or disciplined. I went on a UK-wide speaking tour during the NEC election campaign. I spoke with thousands of people in person and electronically. The Belfast meeting actually was held on live stream rather than in person, because that was 3 weeks ago once the restrictions came in. There's a huge appetite for fairness amongst Labour members and supporters. Absolutely, that's why we joined the Labour Party in the first place, why we vote Labour. We want fairness. We support fundamental principles of law, for example, innocent until proven guilty. This is something that we share with all kinds of people across the UK and the world, innocent before proven guilty, and it's one of our key defences against any sort of purges or unnecessary disciplinaries coming our way. We also want to see the NEC actually represent our members and act as accountable and transparent representatives, you know, having things like a register of interest to sign up to a code of conduct for public life, or the equivalent as code of conduct for representatives within the Labour Party to be accountable back to the members. So, for example, I've already written a report on the NEC campaign and the lessons that we've learned from that, and I've published my register of interest as an elected councillor. I have to do that anyway. Labour MPs have to have a register of interest. I don't see any good reason why the National Executive Committee members shouldn't all have the registers of interest in the public domain, or at least on the Labour Party website so members can see it. To paraphrase Joe Hill, as well as mourning the loss of our, or Joe Hill said, don't mourn, organise, and I think we kind of have to do both at the same time. As well as mourn, organise. So we're mourning the loss of a Labour government, we're mourning the loss of Jeremy Corbyn as our leader, but we need to organise at the same time at all kinds of levels. So at the local level, the mutual aid support groups have sprung up brilliantly, specifically about COVID-19, and that's great. And our hearts go out to everybody suffering under this awful virus. There's been way too many deaths already. It's appalling. The COVID-19 mutual aid groups are a great form of support, and I'm finding the biggest form of support that I get is my branch. It's branch Labour members that are on WhatsApp groups. We're cheering each other up with humour, we're asking for support, we're giving support. It's that kind of mutual aid group we can build from the branch level and also CLP level. I think we should now politically be embracing the new technology, like this Zoom meeting is a good example of, so that we can have executive committee meetings of our branch and CLP. That's perfectly within the Labour Party guidelines. 2 weeks ago, I organised our Labour group meeting because I'm secretary of Wirral Labour Group of Councillors. We held that on an online platform. It worked fine. There's ways of voting as well and making decisions. We built up to that by having a practice run of the executive, then a meeting of the exec, then a practice run of a group meeting, and then a proper full decision-making group meeting, because people need that sort of step-by-step approach before, rather than jumping in at the deep end. We need to walk before we can run. But it works, and we need to continue that political organising. And at another level, personally, like for the people I saw in the questions, some people are worried about getting their letter of disciplinary action. Like I've had 2 of those in the last 14 months, and I've beat them off. So we need to prepare yourself for that if you're actually worried about it, and there's lots of reasons to be worried about that given how things are going. Get your own preparation, disaster action plan ready. So one of the things I did was do a risk analysis, because I used to work in cooperative businesses, so risk analysis was a kind of framework that worked for me. But you have to think about what your worries and fears are and how you can shore up the gaps. And so for me, a lot of that was one-to-one conversations with people who I could pull in a crisis. So people that could help with political support, with legal support, media and social media work, emotional and personal and practical support. So lots, because when you're suspended, well, my experience is that everything needs to happen all at once. So having lots of people lined up to do some of that work, like as part of my team, that really worked. It helped build my resilience to deal with those kinds of attacks. What else? Yeah, there's just so much to go through in this time. Acting quickly is important, both personally and politically, seizing this moment. I think we should all be, if we can, communicating why we're staying in the Labour Party. To lead by example is the most powerful form of leadership. So I'm going to be putting out on social media why I'm staying in the Labour Party, and I'll share that with you now. Number 1, Jeremy Corbyn is staying in Labour. Hundreds of thousands more members are part of his legacy. We count, we matter. That's why one of the reasons I'm staying in Labour. Number 2, it's important that we hold our leadership and our government to account, and even more so in times of crisis and disaster. Because thirdly, our government's first job is to protect the people. The government should have prepared an army of nurses and carers, equipped and trained for a war against this pandemic or any pandemic. But instead, this government invested in military might and tax breaks for the rich. And already there's been so many bereaved families, and we need to work together to challenge establishment cover-up of disasters and justice, their cover-up and denial of preventable deaths. Fourthly, democracy includes one member, one vote. If you're not a member of Labour, you can't vote for decisions or not elections of officers and candidates. Fifthly, for myself, like many members and the wider public, have voted for me to represent them as a local councillor and to fulfil our manifesto. Our hopes are invested in each other. 46,150 members voted for me to be on the National Executive Committee, and many are asking me to stand again next time around. Sixth, the membership of Labour doesn't stop me supporting justice in other ways too, in the healthcare sector, in other workplaces, support through humour, culture, cooperatives, across borders, and back on the streets when that's possible. 7, Labour can be a fabulous family. The membership is not bad for my mental health, and if it is bad for your mental health, then all respect to you, it's fine to leave if it's not good for you, if it's not good for your mental health to stay in Labour. But most of the time, it's very good for me to engage in collective struggle. And as Jeremy Corbyn puts it, we can build a society based on social justice, equality and care for our environment, but it won't come about unless we fight for it. And that's it. Number 8, we can create a new normal, a new normal of caring and socialism, and we can do that better together than separately. This crisis has shown that we can house the homeless, and we can rebuild the welfare state in the spirit of 45, never again for anybody. Thank you very much.
Great, Jo. Thank you very much. Right, our last speaker today is Lee Rock from the Labour Left Alliance, and then we'll have some time for questions after that. Lee, over to you.
Thanks very much, Phil. Thumbs up if you can hear me, Phil. Is that working? Brilliant. Firstly, I just want to thank the organisers for allowing me to speak. I mean, I'm no longer an officer of the LLA, but I'm pretty clear I can represent the general thrust of what the LLA is about, as I've been very involved in it. Not all the views are going to be hard and fast ones, because there's obviously a range of views within the LLA itself. But firstly, I should also say I'm really impressed with the numbers of people that are here. I was part of a meeting yesterday organised by the LRC, JVL and Red Labour, and I was impressed. I mean, they had, I think, just over 90 people. So to get 350 people in this meeting, I think is testament to the hard work that the organisers have been doing. So thanks for that. I think moving on to the issues at hand. There's a lot that's been said, always a problem when you come in as the fourth speaker out of four. We have to recognise that it's been a big defeat this weekend. That is a big defeat from where we were. You know, we had Jeremy Corbyn elected overwhelmingly 2 times, and now after that, we're stuck with the majority of the members who voted clearly going for Keir Starmer. Why is that? You know, I would suggest that a lot of people have fallen for this idea that we need somebody who's respectable, somebody who's electable, etc. And you know, we've given the hard left, as they might see it in Labour chance. Now let's try something else, and that's hugely disappointing for us to see that. But it's not unexpected, I would suggest, because as soon as that general election was held, people in their branches and their CLPs will have seen an influx of new members that were joining the Labour Party. My own branch went from just over 400 members to over 500 members in the space of 3 weeks. They weren't joining to reinforce the left. They were seeing an opportunity to come in and change the direction of the party on the whole, not everyone, but on the whole. We then saw the nominations for leaderships through the CLPs. And again, that gave us another indication of the way things were going. The sheer volume of CLPs that were now nominated Corbyn, were now nominating Starmer, etc. So of course, you know, we all saw the way the wind was blowing. I think it's interesting that Keir Starmer has had to pledge to support the policies of the manifesto and the position that we've held. He still recognised that they had to hold to those policies to get elected, recognised that there are still, despite the moves from a lot of members for something else, there's still huge support in the Labour Party for the policies. And I think that's important that we keep that very much in mind. All surveys that are done of Labour Party members demonstrate exactly that. Those policies are popular. What we're going to see, I think, though, from Starmer, while he promises to stick by those policies and he promises for unity, those promises will soon fall away. Bit by bit, he will attempt to remove those policies. And I think even quicker, the so-called calls to unite the party will start to fall apart. Some people have been putting in on the chat what's happening with the shadow cabinet. I've not been able to keep up with that and listen to the speakers, but it doesn't sound particularly unifying in terms of number of people that are on the left that have been being removed. So somebody said Barry Gardner, somebody said Trickett, etc. So these are not good signs. I think for us, one of the very important points for us to stay in is I think a lot of the people who've supported Corbyn in the past, but have now voted for Starmer, are going to be receptive to the arguments of the left in the party when a lot of those promises that have been made start to be proved to be false. But of course, we need to be in there to have those discussions with them. So I think that's quite key. The other big disappointment for me over the last 24 hours or so has been the number of good socialists that have resigned from the Labour Party. I think that is a problem. And, you know, we have to do our best to try and stop that happening as much as, you know, as much as we can. The more people that are involved, the better. I think we also have to recognise that as disappointing as the result is, this was not a complete wipeout. 80,000 members voted for Richard Bergen, and Richard Bergen stood on a pretty left platform, you know, for open selection, etc., refused to sign the Board of Deputies pledges. So to have 80,000, that figure, let's keep in mind for those people who are considering going elsewhere, that's 20 times the number of all the left groups outside the Labour Party put together. That's getting the kind of perspective. So I think for socialists to walk away from an audience that size would be an incredible loss and an incredible waste. In fact, you know, even if we look at the vote that Joe got, and I won't give the exact number, Joe's done that, but it's over 40,000 votes for Joe Bird on again, a great platform. It's a huge number. And so, I mean, congrats on that great campaign and a really credible vote, Joe. Also, just while I'm here, I should praise Trish Williams as well, who actually, without any group backing, got 10,000 votes on a good platform. And that was actually better than some of the smaller left groups as well. So it shows there's an appetite, you know, within the Labour Party still, you know, in its tens of thousands. Going on to what we need to do, I think everybody will accept most of that kind of analysis of how we got to where we are. We still, we looked at momentum at the beginning, didn't we all? You know, we all joined it. We thought this was a chance to organise, to build the left, and it had such promise. And then, quite frankly, it failed, didn't it? John Landsman took over the running of it. John Landsman, you know, turned against good comrades like Chris Williamson, Jackie Walker, etc., and, you know, has proved, and as in terms of the battle, you know, regarding the issues around anti-Semitism, Palestine, Israel, etc., he's been found wanting. And so that's held us back as a left for a long time, because momentum occupied the place in the party where a real left could have been built. And by the time we've tried to build something else, we're very late in the day, but we still have to try and do that. And I think the fact that in less than a year, 2,000 people have signed up to the Labour Left Alliance, I think shows the potential for us to do that. And that potential is still there, because even though many people are leaving, there's still going to be tens of thousands on the left who are going to remain in the Labour Party. We have to try and organise them as much as we can. We also need to, as Joe mentioned, we need to try our best to unite with the other existing groups, to have a united slate when it comes to these elections. We should have won those elections, and if it'd been just a little bit more unity, just a little bit more, then Joe would have been elected, and that would have been a great step. You know, it's so close to that. You know, it wouldn't have taken a huge amount more. But unfortunately, there are those, as I think Ian mentioned at the earlier on, that aren't that interested, because they regard themselves as, you know, the kingmakers. I also want to touch on some, you know, we haven't achieved a huge amount in the Labour Party, but there's one rule change that I think is very important. Because the right and the PLP thought there was no chance, get them on the ballot paper, you won't get, you know, you get a tiny vote, miserable vote. And their role as gatekeeper, by using the 15% of nominations from MPs, that was their role, to keep people out, keep them off the ballot paper. They were so complacent, they allowed him to get on, and boom, the rest is history, you know, in terms of what happened there. Now, the rule change I'm going to talk about is, instead of 15%, it's gone down to 10%. And it might not seem much, that 10% plus 5% of CLPs or 5% of, you know, 3 trade unions. But with 33 members of the Socialist Campaign Group, we can now, we're guaranteed to get somebody on the ballot paper from the left whenever the next leadership election comes up. That's an important change. That rule change will, I'm sure, come under attack. So that rule change will need to be defended at Labour Party conference. We need to make sure that isn't watered down. Yeah, that isn't walked down to favour the gatekeepers of the PLP. And that's important, that rule, because we all believe, certainly I only joined the Labour Party in 2015, after many years as an activist further to the left and within my trade union. And many of us believe, myself included, that the Labour Party could not be won to become a mass socialist party, because of its rules, because of the way it's established. Now, Jeremy Corbyn proved actually that that wasn't the case. By that accident and by the changes now, the potential for us to build a mass socialist party was there, and it still remains. It's not going to be easy. We're going to see, without a shadow of a doubt, attempts to move the policies. We're going to see an increase in the witch hunt. There is no doubt about that. But the potential is still there until those changes take place. Okay. In terms of the witch hunt, if you're not already a member of Labour Against the Witch Hunt, I would urge you to consider signing up to that. In terms of what we can do about the witch hunt, which is, I think, really a key question for us at this time, we need to be putting in motions again, firming up as much as we can that the Chakrabarti report is actually implemented. That report, whilst not everything that we might want, talked about the ideas. You can't go through trawling through people's things. You can't immediately go to suspension unless it's the most serious cases. All the things that they're now trying to, the board of deputies with their pledges and Starmer writing to them, all the things that they're now trying to undo. In the Chakrabarti report, we can hold to a much better position, and that report is there and open for us. I think by resigning, and this is kind of real key for me at the moment, Joe's touched on it. What does it do? You've resigned now, it strengthens the right. It strengthens their ability to change the policies. It makes it harder for us in the future to get a left-wing leader elected. It might be at some time these things, we have no hope left, but I don't think we're anywhere near that position at the moment. So I think we have a fight on our hands, and we have to try and unite people as part of that fight. I'm not going to talk about the trade unions struggle as such because Ian's here, and it would be me to take in that role. So I'll leave Ian to continue dealing with that side of things. But I would say that any strike actions that take place, the Labour Left Alliance needs to be attending those picket lines, showing support, getting there, along with the other left groups in and outside the Labour Party. We should not be just focused on the Labour Party activities. We have to be out there as well. Palestine, the demonstration support around those things as well. Kashmir, whatever it may be. But, we need to be involved. On the trade union thing, the Labour Left Alliance has recently established a trade union officer to lead on that work. So I think that's really important and follows on from the points Ian's been making. So whilst I think I'm going to finish on this point, Phil, is whilst I think we remain very central to our work within the Labour Party, I do think a lot of our work will shift away from the Labour Party work, as a lot of people are going to be demoralised. A lot of people are going to think, I don't want to spend the time, going along, doing all these things. So whilst some of our orientation for people might shift, that doesn't mean that people need to resign. This is what I've been writing all over the place, and I'll just read it out. In the new political situation, we will need to increase our efforts on campaigns outside of the Labour Party structures, but maintain party membership cards and, where still possible and worthwhile, continue to play key roles in branches and CLPs at least. So if we have individuals who can't face all the work they've been doing, holding branches or CLPs together, etc., that's fine. Step down, focus your work elsewhere, but maintain your membership card. Joe's probably got to be on a slate for the NEC elections in the summer if it goes ahead, or certainly, whenever, if it's in the autumn, etc. You can't vote for Joe if you've left the Labour Party. You can't vote for a new Labour leader whenever that might come around if you've left the Labour Party. And I hear people saying, well, you can leave and you can always rejoin. It's not always as simple as that, because some CLPs don't just, when you join, you're on a probationary period. We don't know it, but officially we are. And that's when people can get stopped. So people need to keep that in mind. You can't just jump out and jump in. Most people, you might be able to do that, but it's not the case, especially if you're a left winger and you've got right wing CLP officers, etc. So I'll leave it for now, because I know there's plenty of people who want to come in, but as I say, we need to perhaps shift our work, but maintain the membership cards.
Right, thank you, Lee. Right, we've got nearly an hour for questions now. I'm going to start off by reading a couple of written questions out, and then I'm going to ask Michael Boyle to speak, if we can get him ready to come in a few minutes. So I'm going to put the first question to Joe first. This is from Una. She says, what do the panelists think of Keir's stance on anti-Semitism? I have heard him say that the accused should be expelled and that they can appeal later. He's also ignored the JVL. What do you make of it, Joe?
Yeah, I've been very disappointed by what Keir Starmer has said so far about anti-Semitism. He thinks it's a major problem in the Labour Party, and while there are, I'm not denying it exists, but it's not to the extent that it's been portrayed. Less than 0.1% of members have even been accused formally of anti-Semitism, never mind been found to have breached the rules. I felt erased when he said that. I thought, I am part of the Jewish community. I feel welcome in the Labour Party most of the time, at most levels. So that's not my experience, to be unwelcome in the Labour Party, as he seems to be implying that all the Jewish community feels that way. There's hundreds of Jewish members of the Labour Party, many of whom are in the Jewish Voice for Labour, who have had quite a different perspective, a political perspective, not a religious or cultural perspective so much on that. I think we address that by doing what we do. We do politics, we organise, we pass motions, we stay in Labour, we network and communicate with other people. And then it's kind of what I was saying before about building your personal support networks, because the personal is political. When I'm accused of anti-Semitism, it's personal, but it's political also. And the personal networks that I create, the one-to-one conversations I have, are also political. They're with the officers of the CLP. They're with officers of national networks who can spring into action. And a lot of those conversations, because the way the thing's been working in the last 2 years is, apart from the kind of exclusion of a lot of members around the election times for Jeremy Corbyn, the rest of it has been the kind of one-to-one individual exclusions, not en masse purges. So each response has been tailor-made, and a lot of judgment calls need to be made about how to respond to that. There was a time when quite a few CLPs were suspended en masse. The whole CLP was suspended, like Wallasey or Northern Ireland was suspended, and you need to kind of be a bit canny with the rules to get yourselves unsuspended. So that's judgment calls, and when you're the target of the suspension, it's hard to exercise those judgment calls on your own when you're under a lot of stress. So that's why it's important to build the team around you at all levels. And also, I think it's fine to make the expellers do the work, make the case, and don't kind of leave for them unless you really have to, unless it's bad for your mental health to stay a member. One of the motions we can bring, if it's right for your situation, is like affiliation to Jewish Voice for Labour. The more CLPs and branches that affiliate to Jewish Voice for Labour, the stronger it is. And actually, because Jewish Voice for Labour isn't affiliated to the Labour Party, it means that parts of the Labour Party can affiliate to Jewish Voice for Labour. The emails that Jewish Voice for Labour put out on their websites, the articles, they're really spot on. They've really helped shift the debate, and we keep that going. And the principle of innocent until proven guilty is one we should absolutely uphold all the time, loudly. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Right, now I've got a question from Dave. I'm going to ask Lee to come back on this. So Dave says, there seems little doubt that a witch hunt is already underway and looks likely to escalate based on a false pretext of fighting anti-Semitism. Leading comrades have been picked off one by one, and this is likely to continue. How can we collectively respond?
Yeah, I think I tried to kind of answer that in my first contribution. I think it's going to increase, and I think you're absolutely right. People have been picked off. More people have been picked off than people realise. Actually, I think when you get involved in certain aspects of it, the volume is quite high, and I think that's going to increase. It's going to be difficult. There's no easy solution, but I think Labour Against the Witch Hunt do a great job in terms of publicising things, in terms of actually giving advice and help. So I'd urge people to get along to that, sign up to that. But as I say, I think we have to try and get the Labour Party to adopt its own report, the Chakrabarti report. That's how we have to fight it, because that's their report, that's their grounds. And so I think we really need to focus on that. So that's my answer. I appreciate that's, you know, not much more than what we're already doing. But, you know, I feel that's a difficult position we're in. We're not in the levers of power. So we have to just try and get it through in terms of as much passing the motions, passing it at a conference, organising behind Labour Against Switch On.
Great, thanks. Right, I'm now going to bring in Michael Boyle, who wants to say a few words. Can you stick to about 3 minutes, Michael? You're on now, go for it.
Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me on. I'm a Labour Party member and a left winger. I have been all my life, but I joined Labour in 2015 when I realised that members would actually get a say in the next leader of the Labour Party, and that was before Jeremy actually managed to get on the ballot. Since then, I've been elected a Gedling Borough Councillor, and I'm now a councillor. But the right wing of our CLP have been, well, I've always been in control. And after Jeremy was elected, they had to give us a little bit of space on the left in order to be there. But they tried to shunt us out the way, appoint us to be standing in seats that were unwinnable. Well, actually, I won an unwinnable seat. So it's possible to do things even if you're not in the majority. But I see that the CLP now, lots of individuals in it, are quite triumphalist as to what's happened. So we know that things are going to come down the line. I know also that a lot of those people will be using social media to try and trap people to say things that perhaps after a certain amount of thought, they perhaps shouldn't have said. So I think get involved in your local left alliance meetings, join together on Zoom or on Teams or whatever means you good to keep together and talk to people, support each other, as Joe was saying earlier. And I also think that we've got to have strategies in order to keep the left together and to keep the left in Labour and keep organising and support, you know, the trade union campaigns, which was alluded to by the Bakers Union comrade, but also the next one down the line that's going to come up is going to be, you know, the RMT. Is Keir Starmer going to support the rail workers? We don't know. Let's hope he does. If he doesn't, we must do so and show people within the Labour Party as well as without that we're a force to be reckoned with, and we will win again. And we've got to be patient. I mean, you know, there's still a lot to fight for, and we can indeed fight for it. And we must fight any purges as are coming, because we don't want a repeat of the divisions of the 1980s, which, if we remember, was started by a supposed centre-left candidate, Neil Kinnock, who came as leader of the Labour Party, and then he had to go at Militant and other people on the left, and made us lose the next 2 elections as a result of that. And we must make sure we never repeat those mistakes. So we've got to stick together and use the rule book, use the Chakrabarti report, keep together and keep fighting. And I'm sure we will eventually prevail. We do have the numbers if we are united. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, I'd like to bring in Tina now to say a few words about the witch hunt. You ready, Tina? On the screen, but can't hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, comrades. Yes, it's been a tough few days, I think we can all agree on. And because a lot of people have mentioned the witch hunt, I thought I'll try and speak a little bit about that as well. Specifically, I think what we can learn from this experience. I mean, you know, hundreds of thousands joined the Labour Party to support Jeremy Corbyn, and yet it did not reflect itself in a high turnout for Rebecca Long-Bailey. And why is that? Why have Corbyn supporters chosen to support Keir Starmer instead? And I think that's a huge problem and a huge question we have to answer. And I think she's taken she's ignored what was the best about Corbyn, his principles, his politics. You know, he stood up, you believed in what he said. You believed that he's a principled, you know, pacifist, if you like that sort of thing. You know, we believed him that he is that. And she ignored all of that, and she kind of taken the worst from him, I think, which was the attempt to appease the right, which I think is what unfortunately Jeremy Corbyn tried to do. His day one he came in, he seemed to want to fight for unity in the party. You know, it's always was his watchword, fighting for unity, which is a problem when the right clearly did not want unity. They did everything in their power to stop unity behind Corbyn from happening. So that was a huge problem. And despite every attempt Corbyn made again and again to try and bring the right on board, they did everything in their power to stop him from, you know, achieving that unity, and from undermining him and sabotaging every step of the way. So we've seen, you know, he didn't go for open selection, which is a problem, a huge problem. Could have remade the whole parliamentary Labour Party. But I think the worst he did, and I think that's what's reflected in Rebecca Long-Paley's campaign, is the subordination to the campaign, as Moshe mentioned it, that tried to equate anti-Zionism, which is a criticism of Israel and the actions of the state of Israel towards the Palestinians in particular, conflate that with anti-Semitism, which is hatred of Jewish people. And we've seen this being weaponized in the fight against Corbyn supporters, and he did not step up to that. So I think, and unfortunately, while we have to say, you know, it's worthwhile staying in the party, I totally agree. 80,000 people voted for Richard Bergen. It's fantastic. You know, we should take courage from that. And it says that in the LLA statement, and quite right too, we should take courage. But we also need to learn some lessons, and we really need to get our head around that. There can be no unity with the pro-capitalist right in the Labour Party. We have to fight them. This is actually the class war. The class war is happening in the Labour Party before our very eyes. And we can stay in the Labour Party and try and make a real difference to that, and try and help this class war, which has come to a real climax now under Corbyn in the Labour Party. But we cannot repeat the mistakes that unfortunately Corbyn has made, and we have to be honest about that. We have to stand up to the right. When Tony Blair was elected, he remade the whole Labour Party in the first few weeks. You know, he outsourced policy making to the National Policy Forum. He made a conference into a nothing, you know, into a talking shop. He took powers away from the conference, and he did all sorts of other things. And Jeremy Corbyn, unfortunately, bless him, you know, but he didn't do anything. He didn't use the opportunity we had. So concretely now, I think, and, you know, comrades are asking, what are we doing concretely to stop this? Firstly, don't leave the Labour Party. As Lee said, you don't have to, you know, go to every single meeting. I know they're deadly dull, etc. But keep your membership cards, keep hold of them, to vote for Joe, to vote. I wish we could have voted for Chris Williamson to come on the NEC. Can you imagine what kind of power that would have had, a campaign in favour of Chris Williamson? I think he made a huge mistake by resigning from the party. Don't do that favour to the right. Don't resign. That's what they want. Stay and fight. And I think we can perhaps all unite on a campaign against the Board of Deputies' 10 pledges. One of the first promises that Keir Starmer has made yesterday was to say he will implement the 10 pledges. They're a huge, huge, huge setback for the left, not just for the left, for democracy, if that really goes through. Outsourcing the disciplinary process in the Labour Party to some agency, you know, getting lifelong bans for Jackie Walker, repeat offenders, Jackie Walker, Chris Williamson, Ken Livingstone, lifetime bans. Can you imagine? That is the opposite of what we are fighting for, the opposite of socialism, which was people, you know, people change, and people can change their views, and everything changes all the time. So we can't have lifetime ban on anybody. And even you can be expelled for giving a platform to Chris Williamson or Jackie Walker. I think the left needs to come together for the NEC elections, definitely, but also in a concrete campaign against these Board of Deputies 10 pledges, which is not just about the fight in the Labour Party. It is the class war. It's happening in the Labour Party right now, and it's worthwhile to stay and fight.
Thanks, Tina. Right, I'm now going to read out another question from Rika, and I'm going to ask Ian to come back on this, if you could get ready, Ian. So the first part is, in what ways do Keir's 10 points support the existing demands of various trade unions, or do they run counter to the demands? And the second part is, how can the LLA support trade union members who are already working for the democratisation of the trade union movement and increased input in party structures?
Keir's 10 pledges. Keir's 10 pledges, you know, as long as he sticks to them, will be quite useful. I mean, obviously, his commitments are pretty much in line with where we'd expect the leader of the Labour Party to be, which is why I think it is very, very important that we hold Keir Starmer to account, because I do fear, having seen some of the announcements he's made today, Ian Lavery made great strides in building, a rapport with the trade union movement. So for one of these first acts to let Ian Lavery go or sack him is probably the more apt word, doesn't necessarily send, in my opinion, the right message about the Labour's position in relation to the trade union movement. I'm hoping it's because he's going to find some other way of getting the trade union involvement and not just going backwards to the way it used to be, which is mainly that the trade unions are left out at the conference, left to talk on the fringes, and moved to the back of the conference hall. So I would like to see him actually honour his pledges that he's made. I would like him to keep most of the commitments that were in the 2017 and actually built on in the 2019 general election manifesto. As for the LLA, I mean, I think the LLA obviously has the opportunity to work across the trade union movement. I think most of the people, if you're not in trade unions, just should join the trade union and encourage members of your family or every time you speak in a public venue about why the importance of being part of the trade union movement is critical to building the change that society needs. And I think helping organising workplaces and taking the message of trade unions across every section that you operate in. So I think the LLA can push out a message, make sure that people are aware of strikes that may be happening or campaigns that are going on that are working on behalf of trade unions, and acknowledging, the need for trade union involvement in all of your events that you take part in, making sure that if you've got a trade union liaison, that they are building across the trade union movement and making, it as welcoming as possible for trade unions to come into your organisation. I don't know if that's the answer that she's looking for, but that's the answer she's got.
That's great, Ian. Thank you. Right. Next question I'm going to read out. I'm not sure who to give this to, so wave your hand if you want to come back on it. So what motivations and hope can we give to people to stay in the Labour Party, especially in the face of an expected right-wing onslaught against the left? Moshe, would you like to come in? Your mic's on mute, Moshe. So Moshe, you're still on mute. Let me...
Oh, yeah, sorry, I unmuted myself. I think it's simply wrong to give up without a fight. There is still a lot to fight for within the Labour Party and outside. And it's not just about electoral policies. Remember that Thatcher had to give up the poll tax while she was in government. And this was because of the opposition that was organized countrywide. Resigning from the Labour Party now will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. We can't find because there's not enough of us. So by resigning, you make it true. Actually, there's quite a lot of us within the Labour Party, and if you resign, you are just leaving the fight without fighting. It is treating the politics of the Labour Party and of the left as a spectator sport. this is not a spectator sport. I mean, if you are a spectator in a football match and it doesn't go, you stop enjoying it, or your team doesn't win and you get fed up, you leave the stadium. But this is not a spectator sport. This is a participation sport. It is a battle, and you don't leave just because your side is not winning. In order to make it winning, you have to stay and do your best to encourage your co-thinkers and co-fighters to go on. There is still a lot to be fighting for. There are, when I rejoined the Labour Party in 2017 or late 16, I met some comrades who were there in the worst years of Corbyn, of Blairism, and who continued fighting. And you can't say that they wasted their time. I mean, they did a lot of useful work, and they prepared the ground for us returnees. And so I say, keep up the good fight. I mean, it doesn't mean that all your political activities should be within, branch meetings or CLP meetings. I mean, there's a lot of struggle going on outside. I mentioned already the successful fight against the poll tax under Thatcher. Fighting in opposition can achieve a lot of things. That's what I have to say.
Whoops, right, sorry. Right, I'm going to read out a question from Mike Hogan now, and then we're going to have a couple more speakers. So Joe, I'll ask you to come back on this, please. So Mike says, how will LLA go on the offensive and advance a socialist vision for the Labour Party? What about support for a socialist clause 4 as put forward by Richard Bergen and Labour for clause 4?
Thanks. I can't speak for Labour Left Alliance. I'm not on the organising committee or anything like that. But how I think the left can address that is a number of ways that we've talked about today, but also I think most importantly by modelling the future that we want to see, by being as kind to each other as we can during this transition period, by forming new alliances, holding on those when necessary, and working with lots of diverse organisations across the broad left to work together where we can on some activities to build those relationships, working relationships. The clause 4, yes, there's a renewed appetite for clause 4. I see there's a new socialist campaign group of Labour councillors which I'm intending to join, that's explicitly for public ownership of the means of production and so on. I think now we have to also link it to COVID-19. Thousands of people are dying. We can't do this in a bubble. We have to make it relevant to people's lives and deaths. So it's about personal and political again. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Right, just let me see if they're ready to go. Right, I've got a question from Andy Wynn. If you're ready, Andy, can you unmute your mic?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, you're muted again. Click it again. There you go. Can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I just wanted to speak very briefly about the possible postage strike with the CWU, because clearly that is going to be a very important fight if it goes ahead, and can have a significant impact on the way people are thinking and addressing the time we are now in. So I think we need to think through what will be practically possible in terms of supporting the posters. I mean, obviously, going down and shaking their hands on the picket line is not going to work so well this time. I mean, similarly with other elements of the class struggle, I'm sorry, Tina, it's not in the Labour Party really, or it's certainly not just there, but the fights with the trade unions, the strikes, I think are as, if not more important. So we need to support the posters when they come out on strike. Any other key workers who come out on strike, we need to support them. We particularly need to support the struggle of the health workers in our hospitals at the moment to get decent and proper, adequate PPE as personal protection equipment. There, I mean, you know, I could go on quite a long time about this. There's a lot going on with that, and they are being sent to their death. In Chesterfield Royal Infirmary, for example, there were 40 cases of virus positive patients. Not a single member of staff had been tested for the virus. The social workers essentially went on strike and said they were not going back to the hospital until they got proper PPE equipment. Across the health service, I think, was it 2,000 health workers have been tested out of 500,000 or so workers, so virtually nobody. My daughter has just started working as a nurse, and I spoke to her right from the beginning about the importance of campaigning for proper PPE. She said, yeah, Dad, yeah. No, it'd be all right. I'm in Scotland. They're different there. We will get it in Scotland. She changed her mind a couple of days ago when a patient of hers died because she and her colleagues did not have proper PPE, so they were not able to give him proper treatment. That evening, she was scared stiff that she was going to die. So one of the things that we can do, for example, is continue and feed into the 8 o'clock Thursday evening claps for the NHS. And I think one of the things we need to start perhaps this Thursday shouting is PPE for all, or PPE for all health workers, or something around those. So we need to politicize those claps. Thank you.
That's great, Andy. Good point, sir. I'm now going to ask Glyn Secker to come in. Go ahead, Glyn.
Okay, thanks very much. Hi, everybody. Great webinar. Congratulations, everybody. I just wanted to make a couple of points, try and be as brief as possible. One about the anti-Semitism attack. Of course, it's nothing to do with anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. As Joe said, it was only 0.08% of people accused, let alone found guilty. It's used as a premise to attack the left, and it's been extremely effective. So we're all exposed, and JVL is well established, but we're very small in the Labour Party. LLA is well established, but likewise very small. The only way we're going to defend ourselves and in the process actually make an impact on the Labour Party is building a broad left network, a coalition of all our groups and organisations on a number of basic socialist principles that we can all adhere to, and then we can fight in all the fields that are absolutely necessary, as outlined by Ian, in the communities, which hasn't really been done. I mean, it's being done now with the coronavirus, and some of those initiatives are fantastic, but we need to take it into the Labour Party communities, which we lost during the election, the general election. And I think there's this huge cry for an organisation that unites and organises the left. As people have been saying, Liam, people are saying, people are leaving. And unless we very quickly provide some vision of what we're going to do and provide some hope, we will lose a lot of people. So it's quite an urgent task, and we must not follow the sectarian route that Militant unfortunately went down, because they were isolated and they were easily attacked and they were expelled. We need to prevent ourselves from that vulnerability and to move across the broad spectrum of all the left groups. LLA across the country, very extensive network now. The Labour left groups that are maybe have been renamed themselves after the collapse of Momentum. The local community groups, Labour Beyond Cities, Labour Transformed, London Left Network, and so on. And more and more keep popping up as we consider the problems. So we've got to unite all those, integrated tightly with the trade union movement, right on the rank and file shop floor, so that we can do what Ian says, which we take part very actively in their campaigns on the ground. They are our campaigns. And if we begin to do that, we will present a real force for Starmer to cope with. There was an article in The Observer today which said he's going to have to deal with the left. Too blooming right he is if we get organised.
Thanks, Lynn. Well, I'm going to read out a question which I'll ask Lee to answer, and then we're going to have Mark Oley speak, if we could get Mark ready. So, question for Lee is, Chris, so we'll be talking about this. Chris Williamson is starting a grassroots movement. How could we as LLA cooperate with this and other similar grassroots movements to avoid division and build unity among the left?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I think it's very important that initiatives such as what Chris is doing and others, that the LLA needs to go along to them. We need to be involved in them. We need to get our members to participate in them. You know, whatever struggles are going on, it doesn't matter whether they're outside the Labour Party or inside. We need to be involved in them. Chris has got a lot of respect in the Labour movement. The speaking tour he did had huge amount of support. Now, I've no idea what's going to come from his initiative, but it will have people around it, and there will be good socialists who want to, and community activists who want to fight in their local communities, who want to organise there. And I see absolutely no reason, from my personal view, of why the LLA and Labour Party activists shouldn't also get involved in that. We can get involved in that without having to leave the Labour Party, and I think that's what we should be doing, and that's the support and solidarity that we should be showing. So yeah, I think it's an initiative worth supporting.
Thanks, Lee. And I can bring Mark Oley in. He sticks about 3 minutes. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Thanks. Hello, everybody. Just a bit of background. I've only been a Labour Party member for about just over 6 months now, because for 4 years when Corbyn was elected, I was trying to join, but because of my work in Rage, which some of you may have heard about, which was the campaign Stop the Care Home Closures under Tony Blair's government, we saved many hundreds and probably thousands of care beds. And it's on that basis that I'm going to just, my point to the three excellent panelists, 4 excellent panelists. It's basically about the attack on the Palestinian cause and the people like myself. I've been a member of PSC for over 40 years now, from memory. Basically, this is about freedom of speech. And I think I put an email into the chair and the host, basically on setting up, or thinking about setting up, a number of organisational frameworks for people, which Joe Bird also mentioned. I think firstly, we should look at setting up a fighting fund to take and challenge the Labour Party, because from the 3 cases that people might be aware of, Fraser versus UCU, the campaign against anti-Semitism and versus the DPP and Nazim Hussain and Richard Burgon himself, I think it's really important that we have a framework there. If people want crowdfunding or some sort of resource, we will have to support members who are attacked on free speech grounds, because that's what this is. But let's be clear, it is free speech. And the Fraser case for UCU, I think it's paragraph 157, is the one to look at. So firstly, would you, that's a good idea. Secondly, do you think about, I've understand there's 150,000 ballots have gone missing. I only got my vote to vote 2 weeks ago after 10 attempts to get my ballot paper. by threatening legal action and referral to the Electoral Reform Society. Next day, I had three emails in my inbox. So clearly there was a concern, and I know the Labour Party internally have been under some, some pressure. But another fundamental point is: do we set up maybe an email database? Rage did this across the whole of the UK, which meant in Birmingham, where we stopped the closure of 30 care homes, and Norfolk, where there was 32. We had a massive organisation. Facebook is one way of doing it, but also I think maybe a database of people who can support members, advocates. Like myself, I do legal work for the trade union. I'm an advocate. I do employment tribunals and the Teachers Regulation Authority. And I think I'm happy to provide my services as a member to colleagues. But the crucial thing is, do we have a national framework email database? Secondly, do we set up a fighting fund to support members who are attacked on free speech grounds? That's what this is. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Now got Naomi to come in. You unmute yourself, Naomi. Switch your video on if you'd like, but just your mic otherwise.
You completely, Lee. I can't find you. My system shut down.
Go ahead, Naomi. We can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. I can't see anything now. I appear to be off the call. Thanks very much. I'm very impressed with the technical arrangements here. Really whizzy stuff. Just a couple of points then. I think we can take a lot of encouragement from the fact that we have a record of successfully fighting back at grassroots level in a number of instances. Look at how grassroots activism allowed Jo to overcome her unjust suspension during the NEC election campaign, get back on the ballot. People kept on nominating her even while it looked as if she might not be on the ballot, because we just said, we all got together, didn't we? And we went ahead and did that. And look at the fantastic results she's got. We can do these grassroots things. The same kind of energy went into getting Glyn back in when he was suspended, and Moshe back in when he was expelled. Those, of course, are three Jewish examples, and there are other people who are not Jewish who have also suffered from this witch hunt. We can fight back, and we must continue to do so. So the energy and the strength that we have at grassroots level has to be the means by which we develop these new networks and the sort of new left that we're talking about. So the stuff that Ian was talking about, absolutely critical. Jo talked about building on the mutual aid groups. We've got Keep Our NHS Public activism going on. We've got workplace militancy developing. Again, we've heard some examples today about people just saying, I'm not going to, I'm not going to go into work if I'm not properly protected, or if I'm being put in a situation where I become a threat to my loved ones. So this is where, grassroots activism, taking it outwards into the community, into the trade unions, is absolutely vital. So the organisational implications of that are the new left that we are trying to build has got to have the broadest possible reach. Glyn's already covered that to a certain extent, and others have alluded to it. So there are a whole range of initiatives popping up all over the place. All of you probably know of groups that used to be called Momentum but are now called something Labour Left or something like that, Those groups are all over, and some of them are in LLA already. Lots of them are members of LRC or JVL or other left groupings. So, this is the way we've got to reach out to the broadest possible layer. And I think it's really important to say, I'm in JVL, I'm delighted that we do seem to have a certain amount of respect and so on, but we are not going to stand up and say, we are the new left, and LRC is not going to say that either. No individual grouping can say, we're it, join us, and job done. We've got a big job of networking to do. Just wanted to say something quickly about Starmer's suggestion that his success will be marked by Louise Ellman re-entering the party. My goodness, this is really scary, isn't it? Because some of you may have seen an investigation that we did at JVL about how she was waging a campaign against Jewish members of her own party with her allies, publicly eviscerating these people over and over and over again, even though much of what she was saying, and we've had this out publicly for a long time, and there's been no comeback, no suggestion that we were libeling her or anything. Everything we've said is true. So be very clear. That is not the sort of person we want back in the Labour Party, and we've got to defend the primacy of people who are genuine socialists and real anti-racists. We need to get more of our black and other BAME comrades involved in this movement too. So thanks very much for having me. I can't actually see you. I hope I'll be able to come back in a minute because I can't see anything on my screen. Did you hear me there?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Right, we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to read out one more question, and then I'm going to ask the panelists to come back on that and everything else that's been said if they've got any concluding thoughts. So this question's from Derek. What prospect is there of Labour-run councils setting needs budgets after we start to emerge from the present coronavirus crisis? So if I can go to Moshe first, just, you ready to come in? You have to unmute your mic. I can't hear you, Moshe. Let's see if I can do it from my end.
Okay.
I can hear you now, thank you.
What do you want me to comment on?
Well, just if you've got any concluding remarks.
Yes, I have. And that is, I think, that a question that somebody wanted to ask: how can we go on campaigning for Palestinian rights? I think, that is at the core of it. It is really behind the false accusations of anti-Semitism and so on. And my answer is simply collect facts and stick to the facts, publicize the facts. The facts in this case are available. They are, by the way, published very extensively in the Israeli press, in the Israeli media. Haaretz, for example, publishes a lot of what is going on. And I find that simply making people aware of what is going on is so persuasive and so horrifying. The atrocities that Israel commits as a colonial power against the Palestinians. Once you simply publicize the facts, you don't need to add any invective. There's no need for any swear words or anything like that. Just present the facts. And this is so persuasive. I mean, I'm not for comparing what Israel does with the Nazi regime, but you can find a lot of Israeli scholars like Zeev Sternhell, who is a world authority on fascism, that has made this comparison. I'm not making this comparison, but the facts are so horrific that making them known is effective educational tool.
Thank you. I can go over to Ian now.
Hi, pal. Just want to answer one question that did come up from Dave Gannon on the recognition for veterans, and I'd say, in answer to his questions, my opinion is yes, absolutely, veterans and their families should be recognised, and yes, the army should be recognised as workers and unionised. All military personnel should have as everybody. Should have the right to join a trade union. So, yep, and I think the sooner the Labour Party does that, the better. Obviously, I've been fascinated by today's debates, and I think one of the things that's come over loud and clear is that despite the negative feelings that we may have received from yesterday, there's the belief is there that that we may have had a setback, but the struggle will continue, and part of us, that came into this movement understands that the struggle, is always something that we've been prepared to take part in. And I don't see any difference today on Sunday than I did, 2, 3, 4 years ago when I woke up one Sunday morning then either, or 5 years ago when Jeremy Corbyn got elected and he went down to speak to those people that were calling for refugee rights. I mean, the situation, as I see it, is this: if you believe that society needs to change, if you want to see people, live their lives with dignity and respect, then there's only one way we're going to do that, is by acting collectively. And some of us will be doing it in the Labour Party, some of us will be doing it outside of the Labour Party. But one of the most important things is that we act in solidarity with one another, that we support one another, and that we build campaigns around the issues that will really make a difference for us all. And I think if we do that, then the opportunity for us on the left to be able to lead to that firm land that we believe in, called socialism, is still within our grasp, regardless of any setbacks we may have had with inside the Labour Party. They're only part of a movement. We're also the other part of the movement too. It's made up of people, and we make those decisions for ourselves.
Fantastic, Ian, thank you. Joe, can we go to you now?
Likewise, it's been brilliant having this conversation together. I had a quick look through the participants, friends old and new, lots of people whose names I just know in this era, and I've never met you, given you a hug, and I don't know your face, but you matter. It matters that you're part of this conversation, that you stay in Labour, and we'll keep going together. One of the reasons it matters is the rise of fascism, like Moshe was saying. You can see different varieties of fascism around the world. Channel 4 News reported on 2 French doctors who said that there should be medical experiments on African prostitutes and people who test HIV positive. This is awful. This is Mengele, direct line. So we need to keep offering that our absolute socialist alternatives. It's the best antidote to fascism. We care for everybody without exception. One of the things that I noticed whilst campaigning for the NEC and talking with lots of people is the BAME issues for BAME members, Black, Asian, minority ethnic members of the Labour Party. The Mahmoud Mirza, the leading candidate, took out straight away in the middle of the contest, and the relative lack of organisation among BAME-led groups, and that's something that I want to support, and I think all our different organisations can support. And I hadn't realised, unfortunately, sorry, that there wasn't a BAME person on the panel today, and I pledge that this is the last time that I'll be on an all-white panel. Just as some men move away from all male panels, I won't be doing that going forwards. Yeah, unless it's specifically set up as an all-white panel for some strange reason in a future meeting. There's loads of questions and comments that I didn't have the chance to respond to, just multitasking, but I'm more than happy to pick those up outside the meeting if anyone wants to contact me. I've got a website, social media, all of the rest of it. And just, yeah, looking again at who is here, whether we got the chance to speak or not, it's a strong basis. We've got a lot of experience between us. We've got a lot of good organisations, good relationships. We can build on that. I was particularly enthused by what Glyn was saying about how organisations are moving towards working together much more closely. And I look forward to seeing more of that action happening in the future soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for that. And I do hear your comments about diversity, and I'll make sure we act on that in the future. Can we go over to Lee now, please?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think having Moshe Machover here as a Palestinian Israeli can possibly show some diversity in the audience. I think we need to be a bit careful in terms of some of the phraseology, I think. Coming back to the question about no cuts budgets that somebody posed, I think it's inevitable at some point. Some councils are going to have to set some no cuts budgets. You just cannot carry on cutting. There comes a point when you're just going to have to say that. Now, which Labour council, which Labour group might vote for that first remains to be seen, but I think it is inevitable, and people do have to give that serious consideration. I think in terms of kind of where we're going now, it's important that we offer a socialist alternative, because where we don't have that alternative, we see, the voice of the right gets more of a hearing. And, you know, and that's where we talk about the racism, the Islamophobia, that's where all that's coming from. If we don't offer our alternative, then that alternative and that scapegoating is, you know, comes to the fore. So it's really important that we're standing up and uniting to take those things on. I think, kind of in conclusion, we have to recognise the difficulties that the Labour left is in. But we also have to not dismiss the possibilities. You know, 80,000 people, the Labour, you know, voting for the left. We have the policies that would be, you know, that Corbyn put through are still the policies. They've not yet been lost. We have tens of thousands of socialists. So I don't think, you know, stay in the Labour Party, join the LLA. If you're in a group already, try and get that group to affiliate. If you can't, if there's not a local group, we will know comrades in your local area, and the LLA can put you in touch to try and establish a local group. That fight, that's part of the class struggle, is still taking place and will continue to take place in the Labour Party. So I'd urge people to not walk away, but actually get involved in that. If you don't want to spend a huge amount of time on Labour Party work, that's fine. But, you know, maintain your membership card. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Lee. Right, we're gonna wrap things up here. Thanks to all of our speakers and to my colleagues who've helped organise this and been working away in the background. We had one last question. Simply, is there any hope? And I'd say yes, and I hope we've given each other some hope today. Personally speaking, I didn't join Labour just because of Jeremy Corbyn. I joined because of people like all of you, because you all joined over the last five years, and I wanted to work with you. A few of us are going to stay online for maybe half an hour in the chat windows to answer any questions. If anyone wants to know more about the LLA, about starting a local group where you are, either ask us now or have a look on our website. There's a list of all the local groups there, and we can put you in touch with them. If you can afford it at the moment, please give us a small donation to help with the cost of this meeting. And I'd just like to say thank you all for coming. I hope you found it really interesting, and I hope it's given everyone some renewed determination to organise. Thanks very much.
Could I suggest that anybody who's got now a question could raise their hand, and we allow hand raising, and then we can, I'm trying to set that up now, sorry. It doesn't quite work yet, 1 second. Actually, I think if somebody in the audience would like to speak, try and raise your hand. Yes, it does work.
Okay.
So you take on the order?
I know there were a few people that really wanted to speak at the end there. Maybe if
Lukman
or Chowdhury want to come in.
Chowdhury's gone, I think. I've tried to get him in earlier on. I think Lukman should come in. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Lukman.
Sorry, I've just got something in the throat. So am I on camera or not?
I'm trying to get you on camera.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hold on.
Oh no, we can't hear you now.
Lukman, can you...
start video, start my video, yeah?
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Tina.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got a number of points. I was a bit taken aback actually, because I expected more discussions than now. Just sitting here for 2 hours, mainly listening to things, because the Zoom meetings we have full discussions like an ordinary meeting at a CLP. So I've got a number of points. I'm going to make it quick, so I'm going to speak really fast. Number one point I got is, I think when we do finally try to choose the 9 people for the next CLP, we should have a reserve team like the football, where if somebody gets suspended, we take the next person, which is the 10th, 11th, 12th, and so on. Because if we go for just the 9, we're going to suffer what we suffered from the last time, people getting suspended. Number 2, when we actually come to finally select people, then we need to make a special provision in there where if we don't get initially black members selected in the first 9, we're going to have to go back on that selection and see what went wrong before we finally do get the 9, to make sure that some of those people are actually are black and ethnic minorities. Another point is that LLA must insist with other left groups that we finally do selections on the online hustings, because things went wrong this time, and I think online hustings can be done. Another point is that at the moment we're having problem, because when the NEC results were announced, so all the other results were given in numbers and percentage. For the Bain seat, we only got percentage. We haven't got the number of people who voted. Now, I'm prepared to say that vote was invalid unless they actually give us the number of people who voted and the number of votes that were cast and so on. If you look at the table, it only gives the percentage, and we're not going to put up with that. Another point is that in the disciplinary process, it looks like that there is actually discrimination against a lot of people, the left and the right, but it looks like there is particularly a discrimination set apart to do with racism within the Labour Party, disciplinary process and Islamophobia. And so far, it's gone on deaf ears for me to be asking the information from the Labour Party. Sorry, I've got 2 more points. I've asked for information from the Labour Party in relation to the number of suspension and expulsion they've had, which is purely Palestinian related. I'm not going to say Israel, because normally people would say the ones that are Israel related. This is where somebody's mentioned Israel or Palestine and they've been suspended. I want to be able to differentiate those numbers from the total number of people who've been suspended and expelled for others, because I think that total number will show that there is disproportionately high number of percentage of people who were purely suspended because for some reason or another they mentioned Israel or Palestine as an offence. The next thing, just a last point, we're actually at the moment in the middle of setting up a National Labour Party Black Members Group, and we started to meet online monthly using Zoom. And at the moment, we've got 50 members, but that's just the very start. We've only been going for a few weeks. Now, we intend to have this group as a national black section of the Labour Party, which actually meets monthly on a Zoom thing. And we've had 1 meeting so far, and we are actually got the next one set up. So that's the end of my thing, just as a brief input from me.
It's great, thank you. Right, have we got anyone else want to come in now? Diane? Oh, Diane's gone.
I'm back.
There you are.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's just that question I have. You know, so many Labour members are very angry about Starmer's letter to the board of delegates, board of deputies, and feel that he doesn't speak in our name. So as well as us clarifying our position in the LLA, for example, on the board of deputies 10 pledges, I think it is his duty as our appointed leader to clarify the points he made in the letter. Why does his tone suggest that anti-Semitism is rife within the party, when as far as we know, that's what we know, as far as we know, it stands at 0.08%, which of course is 0.08% too much. when he talks of our failure to stamp out anti-Semitism, he is talking about that at 0.08%, unless he has other figures. Does he think, or does he not think, that the party has got stronger on stamping out anti-Semitism, as we've all been led to believe? And when he speaks of judging his success by the return of Jewish members and those who could no longer support us, he suggests that he understands that they were subject to anti-Semitism from the Labour Party. Could he give us, these are the questions I think we should be asking him, could he give us, the members, some insight into this, as we, the members, are still in the dark, as we have not been given any evidence of anti-Semitic incidents? Is he privy to information that we do not have? And could he clarify the decisive action that he wishes to take? So my question really, which was a question initially, is should the LLA, along with other entities, for example, JVL, Labour Against the Witch Hunt, ask Starmer to explain this letter this week? I mean, it's an action I think should happen now, and give a public answer. I think it's a case of acting as we mean to carry on, and that the action is needed now.
Excellent. Thanks, Diane. Is there anyone particularly you wanted to direct that? Or does anyone want to come back on that? I can see Joe and Lee are still here. Joe, do you want to come in?
Thanks. These are excellent points. We should use all the mechanisms that we have. I'm sure JVL and others will raise those, or have already raised those questions. There was a great statement put out yesterday. The main way to do it is through your CLPs and through motions that then go up to the NEC. That's where we need to carry on using our internal Labour Party democracy.
Great, thanks, Joe. Right, I'm not sure who. I'll bring Alec Price in. I can't see you, Alec, but are you there?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, really good meeting today, actually. So well done for everyone who put the time and effort into making that a success. I wanted to talk a little bit about where we get the energy from to build our organisation and implement our ideas, because when the whole Corbyn thing happened, there was a lot of energy generating in the Labour Party. So you go to meetings and there was a lot of energy around, and it would push you on to do stuff. In a lot of areas that has changed now. So if you go to Labour Party meetings now, rather than getting energy, it seems to sort of sap it out of you. And I think the place where the energy is going to be ultimately comes from the fact that working class people get exploited by the system, and they were fighting back through the Labour Party, and that's why it was generating so much energy previously. But obviously now with the lockdown and all the rest of it, a lot of the energy now seems to be going into things like the applause at 8 o'clock every Thursday, seems to be going into people on the shop floor having to argue with management about the right PPE that they should be getting, or whether they should be paid their wages or not if the companies decide to lay them off like they did in, I think it was Wetherspoons. That seems to be where the energy is right now. So that's not an argument to say the Labour Party's finished, but it's an argument to say that the Labour Party's just one arena of struggle. It's one where a lot of the energy isn't there in the way that it used to be, but it is in other areas. And if we can target those areas, we might find the energy that we can then bring into the Labour Party to pursue the ideas of socialism through that forum. So in terms of what the LLA can do, I think we need like chants. I think we need window posters, this kind of thing that we can use every Thursday that helps build a generalised movements in favour of workers having their PPE, in favour of workers having, proper pay, etc. Because that's the sort of thing that's going to set the agenda. And if you're taking that kind of agenda into the Labour Party, and we know that most Labour Party members will actually agree with that, despite a lot of them voting for Starmer, they still want the policies. If we fight on that kind of ground, then we can help set the agenda away from the internal fights that we have to have over like membership and procedure and anti-Semitism, all that kind of stuff. We can get back to the policy, which is what the members agree with us on, and we can sort of build in that way. So it's just for people's thoughts on that way of working, really.
Okay, thanks, Alec. Can we have Heather? Are you ready to ask a question?
Yeah, can you see me okay?
Hello.
Hi, I was going to ask about all these people, including myself, who was taken out as a parliamentary candidate last year based on very flimsy, inaccurate evidence in a dossier, which they didn't actually even send me. But I know that lots of people were in this position, hundreds, in fact, up and down the country. And so I was taken out an hour before the hustings started, based on comments written on the witch hunt site and support of Chris Williamson. That was it, really. I hadn't written anything about Israel or Palestine. It was just basically support for other suspended members. And I haven't done any more about it, but at the time I was encouraged to connect with other people who've been in this position. There must be lots of us. And I'm just wondering what is there any advice of what we can do? Is it too late? Does that mean I might be suspended in the future? I'm a councillor as well. I don't know. If anyone's got anything to say about that, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Go over to... You ready, mate?
Maybe Joe could help with that one, maybe.
Okay, Joe's come back in a minute. Let's have David.
Oh, sugar. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Am I there?
Yeah, go ahead, mate.
All right, yeah. I haven't gone into comment on that, like. What I did want to bring up was that I'm with a group of veterans that are like, we're all socialists, and we're in a network, and like we've been doing meetings and online stuff for quite a while, and that, like, and I mean, I went to the Progress friggin' conference in the Northwest not so long ago. And you were talking about Keir, Starmer and that, like, and I walked in with Veterans for Peace top on, and I got up and I spoke, and I gave a full critique on, like, what I thought the values were, and the fact that Labour Party hasn't taken responsibility for the Iraq War and for its aftermath. The veterans community are actually massively ignored. No one wants to talk about us. No one wants to talk about people who went to Afghanistan or anything. We're just largely ignored, despite us having the highest suicide rate out of any demographic. We're trying to push for representation and for conference-motion representation within the Labour Party. And so I went to this Progress conference, ripped them to shreds quietly. And they didn't have anything to say to me. They thanked me, and that was it. Because we as a demographic are in a position to hold these people to account in a way that nobody else is. And, you know, the Labour Left Alliance and the left in general should support the representation of veterans within the Labour Party and the families, the dependents as well, not just us, it's the wives. And we should be supporting the unionisation of the military, and we should be supporting for the public ownership of the weapons industry to remove the profit incentive for war and remove the PFIs, because the MOD's been used to suck the public purse dry, so that we haven't got PPE for the NHS and that. The military should have been activated in support operations for this at the very beginning. They just built a hospital in 9 days. They could have done it 4 weeks ago. Guys could have been getting trained we do advanced life support and medical training anyway. It wouldn't have been hard to do a 4-week card to get guys being able to use ventilators and the likes. And none of this has been done. And even though I emailed my MP about this stuff, nothing got done. And the Labour Party hasn't even been asking these questions. They're asking about universal credit. They haven't asked about what a practical response is to help the community and help the authorities. using people that are trained and organised to deliver aid. I mean, by the way, the military does a lot of bad things, but it can do infrastructure and it can organise and it can help organise. I did speak to Ian Hodson about basically and the comrades within the military who were active in their central command. I said you need to speak to the trade unions. You need to ask the trade unions to do a needs assessment on industry, so we can, so the military itself could actually then do a proper resource and training programme that would help the local authorities. And Ian's asked the questions, but the TUC's not got back. And, you know, we're in a pandemic right now, and everybody needs to be working together. We need to use all the tools that we possibly can. And people in the left have prejudices against the military, when in fact all the military does is enact the will of the state. Now we need to change what the state is. We need to change what the military is. And we need to come up with an alternative programme for what the military does, which I think it should be more aligned with civil defence and support operations for floods and disaster relief. But, you know, I'm interested to hear what anybody would have to say on that, and if anybody would support that sort of thing, with bringing the military over to the labour movement as workers, and hopefully standing in solidarity with the likes of the Fire Brigade Union, and like if unionised could refuse to help smash things like the miners' strike instead of people going to jail. At the end of the day, we are all workers. We should all be working together. So, you know, I'm welcome to talk to anybody about this and see how we can forward. So now I have a model motion to push forward the representation of veterans in the labour movement as a start. So if anybody wants to get hold of me afterwards, I'm more than happy to speak to anybody about this sort of stuff. So, you know, thank you very much anyway for letting me talk, you know, and contributing. And I think it's been a very productive day today. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, do you want to come back on, like the previous question was directed to you. Do you want to come back?
Sure. Well, I'm hoping that someone from Labour Against the Witch Hunt can answer Heather's question. I haven't heard of hundreds of candidates being taken out. I've heard of about a dozen before the general election and in the current round of elections, especially the NEC. Yeah, you're welcome to send me any evidence. And just on the points that David made, absolutely, this is a great illustration why we need veterans in Labour or veterans for Labour, like, because veterans can articulate very well what the military can do. And, you know, yeah, absolutely. We've seen military people on our TVs like unloading vans one box at a time, whereas you're absolutely right. You've got trained medics there, you've got equipment, you've got infrastructure. Let's use it for COVID-19.
Thanks. Ekua, have you got a question?
Yeah, I'll look for my mic. Oh, and my mic's on, yeah?
Yeah. Hi.
Okay. I'd raised some questions and I've seen other questions raised in the Q&A, and I know you can't get to all of them. And I also like to say that I found it generally a really good debate, certainly highlighted some things for me that I hadn't already thought about that I can take forward. But I do want to raise this issue about the absence of BAME and Black voices, because if we're talking about the way forward for the left, or even for the Labour Party and the Labour movement in general, but for the left, then the fact that you can call this without having a BAME panelist, that you skipped over those questions, so that it's great that I'm speaking now and that Luckman spoke earlier, but actually you've legitimately removed us from being able to speak to the 300 people who joined, and we're only left speaking to the few who are still in at this meeting. So if you actually think about that as a process, it's not a good one. So I'm left torn between feeling inspired to be part of the left movement in the Labour Party and really angry to be excluded, and not just angry for myself, oh, poor me, Black people, we're not being included, but actually for the left as a whole, because if you don't include us, you can't build unity. If you don't understand how we have stood firm in this movement against many of us, we're in the process of collating it, many of us against real racism being waged against us. And yet we have stayed firm, we haven't gone out there, because we want this movement to succeed, we want the Labour Party to succeed. It's time the left came on side with us and joined us and became a unity. It isn't a case of why not black African heritage racism, not anti-Semitism. It isn't that case. It's why not all? Why aren't we addressing this holistically? It's like we've run so far. Why the left needs to unify to be able to move us forward as a party, because it's central to our core and our values as a socialist. So I'm not looking for an apology. What I'd probably prefer you to do is to actually read a book like, I don't know, White Supremacy and Me. Why did you organize this without us? And how are you going to ensure that you organize with us in the future? There are BAME organizations. I'm a member of Grassroots Black Left. In no way am I a representative of that organization. I'm just an ordinary member who pays my subs and has conversations. But we exist. And I'm more disappointed and worried about the thinking and the rationale behind the success of this meeting and that failure to address and include us in it. Because I think only together are we going to seriously be able to move forward. So I was really appreciative of Joe pledging never to be on an all-white panel again. And I believe you, Joe. But the fact is it happened. And the thing is, let's not just say sorry. Let's address why it happened and then move forward so it doesn't happen again, so that we can really make this difference.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but please do understand that on a panel of 4 people, it's very difficult to represent every diversity in the country. But I apologise for not calling more BAME speakers. That was my oversight.
Phil, the problem is by answering it with a question with a response like that, it's not really addressing it. That's why I said I don't want it just to be an apology. This is about investigating the root behind it, and then looking how we move forward, not ticking a box or seeing if we look. You know, there is a real issue here, and there's something that really can help bring our movement forward. It's not. I'm not saying this because I'm feeling personally aggrieved. I'm saying this because I think our movement is being held back. So just saying, oh well, I couldn't, or maybe I should have, or that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a real, thoughtful consideration of why we get to this point, and so that we don't do it again. And I'll mute myself now.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'll raise that with our organising committee. We will look at that. I've just got on the wrong view now. Ken, did you have a question that you wanted to?
We've got Carol still waiting.
Carol, go ahead, Carol.
Hi. Hi, everybody. It's been really, really interesting. But I was very shocked to hear today that the CAA has asked Keir Starmer to instigate disciplinary proceedings against Jeremy Corbyn for anti-Semitism, with a view to expelling him from the party. Has anybody else heard this, and do you think there's any chance of this happening?
Someone got any thoughts on that? Joe?
Yeah, so I saw a screenshot saying that as well. And Keir Starmer's, I saw a screenshot where he's written to the Board of Deputies and so on, asking them to come and meet, and maybe that idea will be floated at that meeting. And of course, whether it happens or not is probably down to us, how much we campaign for or against it. Obviously against. No, there's no good reason on earth why Jeremy Corbyn should be excluded for anti-Semitism from the Labour Party. He's not anti-Semitic and has never said anything like that. In fact, it's the opposite. He's an anti-racist. All kinds of racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all kinds of racism. You know, if we get to a situation where significant numbers or significant people are getting expelled from the Labour Party, then we'll cross that bridge together, being the operative word.
Thanks. Thank you. Right. There's a couple of people with their hands up, but I can't seem to put them onto the panel to speak. Ken, are you still there? Did you want to say anything? Or Dan?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Ken. Go on.
I did put in a question in earlier, and that was, I'd been asked by a member of Cheltenham LLA if we should extend affiliation to include communist and Trotskyist groups, to which I responded, well, how far would you go? Would you extend it to anarchist groups such as the Anarchist Federation? I have my own views on that. I'd be interested in the panel's views on that question.
Phil, there's also Anne waiting to speak.
Yeah. Well, I'll quickly come back on what Ken said. I mean, is this a theoretical question? Because are any of them actually asking to affiliate? So I don't think Federation, and I doubt they'll be asking.
Indeed. It's not a theoretical question. I put it forward because it's one that was asked by one of our members, and therefore a question that may be going around in the heads of other members out there. So that's why my own position on it, you know, to sort of cut to the chase, is that if we are to have credibility as an organisation that might leverage the Labour Party, we would reduce that credibility by affiliating with a group that could be represented as extremist beyond the bounds of the Labour Party, etc., etc. But like I said, I'd be interested to explore whether others shared that view or took a different perspective.
Does anyone want to reply on that, or should I bring Anne in to ask a question?
Bring Anne in and then Lee to wind up, I think.
Anne.
Okay, hi. I'm a member of Labour International, all the way over in Slovakia at the moment. We on the left, we've got the numbers, we got the energy, we've got lots of ideas, we can do great stuff. But how do we get that over to the public when we have most of the media standing in our way and blocking our message, and even worse, propagating a lot of false messages about us? There's been talk about setting up our own media. I mean, there are already some small left-wing alternative media companies that are doing good work, but how do we set up our own media? What kind of media do we need? Has anyone got any ideas about that?
Okay, thank you. Right, it's 1:30 now. I'm going to ask Lee to come back on a couple of those points, if you like, Lee, and then I'm going to have to get off myself. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, just come back on a few of those last questions. I mean, if there was an attempt to expel Corbyn, that would be such a huge declaration of war upon the left in the Labour Party that I think that would just be a huge, huge mistake from Starmer and the right to go down that road. Who knows what would happen? So I think that's a highly unlikely scenario because it would backfire on them massively, and I think they realise that. In terms of Ken's question, I think it's an interesting one because there's a lot of debate going on around who should be allowed to affiliate. My position is quite clear. It's you know, people that organisations that are orientated on the Labour Party, who wish to build a Labour left. I think if you start having affiliated groups who don't have that position, it changes the nature of the organisation, and it also opens us up to, you know, a whole range of detrimental possibilities, such as being prescribed, etc. I think it would be a very dangerous road to go down. In terms of the media, I think it's another thing that Corbyn missed the opportunity. You know, he's in power, you know, in terms of, you know, the leadership of the Labour Party. What an opportunity to really get a left media off the ground at that time. Not been taken. The money was there from all the funding that's coming in, the trade union support. So there was an opportunity for the Labour Party to establish its own media. Unfortunately, we're back to where we were before, you know, on very small scale stuff and supporting other initiatives, you know, and that's just going to be really, really difficult, I'm afraid to say. But, you know, supporting there's a number of media outlets online, etc., that are worth supporting. And we should obviously look as a Labour left to establish something ourselves. And I think this has been a really good initiative as, you know, in a very small way as a contribution to that. To kind of finish up, you know, I'm hoping that people have, you know, that have listened in, have been encouraged to stay in the Labour Party, even if it means them stepping back from some of their activities. And I hope it's encouraged people that we need to establish more local groups across the country. And I think, you know, the fight is still there. That's the key thing. That's where most socialists are. That's where we must be. It doesn't mean we have to do all of our work there, but it does mean we have to remain there. So I'll finish on that, and, you know, thanks for the organisers for a very good meeting. And I'm amazed that there's still, you know, 82 participants online after 3 hours. That's really quite impressive. So thank you.
That's great. Joe, did you want to come back in? No, right. We're going to get off now. Thanks again to everyone. We had over 200 questions put in today, so there was no way everyone could speak. So I'm very sorry to those of you who didn't get a chance. If there is anything I can answer, contact us through the website and I'll get back to you. And hopefully we'll do this again soon. All right, thank you, everybody.